Textbook reading of Theories of Personality, 11th edition, Chapter 1, Personality, What It Is and Why You Should Care. Take a look at the word. Let's start by examining the word you're going to be dealing with this semester. It not only defines the course, but it will also define your life as well. Here are 3 standard dictionary definitions of the word taken at random. The state of being a person, the characteristics and qualities that form a person's distinctive character, the sum total of all the physical, mental, and social characteristics of a person. You get the idea. It's everything about you that makes you what you are, a unique individual who is different in large and small ways from everyone else. It's a simple word, but a difficult concept to truly comprehend, which is why it takes a book and a semester to begin to come to grips with it. We're going to try to understand it, or at least learn something about it, by exploring the various ideas that psychologists have advanced over the years to try to explain. We've organized those ideas, those theories, in terms of their different outlooks on human nature, beginning with Sigmund Freud. We will deal with extensions that grow out of his theory of psychoanalysis and talk about the men and women who revised his ideas or rebelled against them. After that, we'll move on to what is called the lifespan approach, tracking personality development from birth all the way to old age. We'll then discuss theories that focus on individual personality traits, on psychological health, on predetermined behavior patterns, and on cognitive learning from social situations. We will also introduce current ideas for the 21st century and offer some suggestions and conclusions from our exploration of personality. It's important to recognize that personality theorists from the last century rarely considered the importance of ethnic and cultural differences. We will see that it is not meaningful to generalize to all people from, for example, ideas that one theorist based on clinical observations of neurotic European women, or that another theorist based on tests given to American male college students. Therefore, when we discuss research conducted on these theories and describe their use for real-world problems of diagnosis and therapy, we'll also try to show the influence of age, gender, race, ethnic, and national origin, religious beliefs, and sexual orientation. To make your study easier, we will include highlight sections giving brief summaries of research findings, as well as chapter outlines, summaries, review questions, and reading lists. Important words will be defined in the margins. Everyone has one. Everyone has one, a personality that is, and yours will help determine the boundaries of your success and life fulfillment. It is no exaggeration to say that your personality is one of your most important assets. It has already helped shape your experiences up to now, and it will continue to do so for the rest of your life. Everything you have accomplished to date, all of your expectations for the future, whether you will make a good husband, wife, partner, or parent, even your health can be influenced by your personality and the personalities of those around you. Your personality can limit or expand your options and choices in life, prevent you from sharing certain experiences, or enable you to take full advantage of them. It restricts, constrains, and holds back some people and opens up the world of new opportunities to others. How often have you said that someone has a terrific personality? By that, you typically mean that a person is affable, pleasant, nice to be around, and easy to get along with. The kind of person you might choose to be a friend, roommate, or colleague at work. If you're a manager, you might choose to hire this person. If you are ready to commit to a relationship, you might want to marry this person, basing your decision on your perception of his or her personality. You also know how people you describe as having a terrible personality. They may be aloof, hostile, aggressive, unfriendly, unpleasant, or difficult to get along with. You would not hire them or want to associate with them, and they may also be shunned, rejected, and isolated by others. Keep in mind that while you are making judgments about the personalities of other people, they are doing the same about you. These mutual decisions that shape the lives of both the judge and the judges are made countless times. Every time we are in a social situation that requires us to interact with new people, of course, the number and variety of social situations you are involved in are also determined by your personality. For example, your relative sociability or shyness. You know where you rate on that characteristic, just as you no doubt have a reasonably clear picture of what your overall personality is like. Describing your personality. Of course, it's glib and overly simple to try to sum up the total constellation of someone's personality characteristics by using such fuzzy terms as terrific and terrible. The subject of personality is too complex for such simplified description, because humans are too complex and changeable in different situations and with different people. We need to be more precise in our language to adequately define and describe personality. For that reason, psychologists have devoted considerable effort to developing tests to assess or measure personality, as we'll see throughout the book. You may think that you don't need a psychological test to tell you what your personality is like, and in general, you may be right. After all, you probably know yourself better than anyone else. If you were asked to list the words that best describe your personality, no doubt you could do it without much thought, assuming you're being honest with yourself. It is difficult to be honest with oneself, at least for personalities. Heyo. I'm going to skip some stuff there. How does personality develop? Our focus here is not on what your personality is like. You don't need a psychology course to learn that. We'll be studying other forces and factors that shape your personality. Later in this chapter and throughout the book, we will deal with some basic questions about the nature of personality. We will cover a variety of theories that have been proposed to help answer these and related questions about human nature. After we have discussed them, what they are, and how they came about, and what their current status is, we will evaluate how useful they are in answering our questions and contributing to our understanding of how personality develops. We may think of each of these theories as contributing individual pieces to a huge online jigsaw puzzle. Psychologists continue to try to fit these pieces together to bring forth a clear image, a more complete picture of what makes us the way we are, and determines how we look at the world. Ways of looking at personality. We talked about formal definitions of personality earlier. Now let's get away from the dictionary definitions and take a look at how we use the word in our everyday lives. We use it a lot when we are describing other people and ourselves. One psychologist suggested that we can get a very good idea of its meaning if we examine our intentions, what we mean whenever we use the word I. When you say I, you are in effect summing up everything about yourself, your dislikes, likes, fears, virtues, strengths, and weaknesses. The word I is what defines you as an individual separate from everyone else. How others see us. Another way of trying to understand personality is to look at its source. The word goes back to about the year 1500 and derives from the Latin word persona, which refers to a mask used by actors in a play. It's easy to see how persona came to refer to our outward appearance, the public face we display to the people around us. Based on its deviation, then, we may conclude that personality refers to our external and visible characteristics, those aspects of us that other people can see. Our personality would then be defined in terms of the impression we make on others, that is, what we appear to be. Viewed from that perspective, personality is the visible aspect of one's character, as it impresses others. In other words, our personality may be the mask we wear when we face the outside world. But is that all we mean when we use the word personality? Are we talking only about what we can see or how another person appears to us? Does personality refer solely to the mask we wear and the role we play? Surely when we talk about personality, we mean more than that. We mean to include many different attributes of an individual, a totality or collection of various characteristics that goes beyond superficial physical qualities. The word encompasses a host of subjective, social, and emotional qualities as well, ones that we may not be able to see directly, that a person may try to hide from us, or that we may try to hide from others. We may, in our use of the word personality, refer to enduring characteristics. We assume that personality is relatively stable and predictable. Although we recognize, for example, that a friend may be calm much of the time, we know that he or she can become excitable, nervous, or panicky. Thus, sometimes a personality can vary with the situation. Yet although it is not rigid, it is generally resistant to sound changes. In the 1960s, a debate erupted within psychology about the relative impact on behavior of such enduring personal variables as traits and needs versus variables relating to the situation. The controversy continued for some 20 years and concluded with the realization that the long-standing controversial generating dichotomy is pointless. And so the issue was resolved by accepting an introspective approach, agreeing that enduring and stable personal traits, changing aspects of the situation, and the interaction between them must all be considered in order to provide a full explanation for human nature. Unique characteristics. Our definition of personality may also include the idea of human uniqueness. We see similarities among people, yet we sense that each of us possesses special properties that distinguish us from all others. Thus, we may suggest that personality is an enduring and unique cluster of characteristics that may change in response to different situations. Even this, however, is not a definition with which all psychologists agree. To achieve more precision, we must examine what each personality theorist means by the term. Each one, as we will see, offers a unique vision, a personal vision, of the nature of personality, and that viewpoint has become his or her definition. Personality and the social media. Our increasing, almost constant use of the various social media to interact with other people in a virtual reality rather than in person has led to a great deal of recent research which attempts to relate our personalities to the online world in which we now live. There are at least 3 ways in which social media and psychologists may interact. Are you the same person online? We saw earlier that one way of defining personality is in terms of the mask we wear, the public face we display to the people around us. Increasingly, many of us display another face, not in person, but through the internet on social networking sites such as Facebook, i.e. social media. As a result, another way of defining our personality may include how others see us online. But are they seeing us as we really are, or are we creating online some idealized self-image that we want to display to other people? Are we pretending to be someone we are not, or are we conveying an accurate description of our personality? Some research suggests that most people are honest about their online faces. Studies conducted in the United States and in Germany found that social networking sites do convey accurate images or impressions of the personality profiles we offer. The researchers concluded that depictions of personalities presented online are at least as accurate as those conveyed in face-to-face interactions. A more recent large-scale study in Germany, however, found that many people have a tendency to present themselves online as being much more emotionally stable than they really are. Other later studies have found that those who are introverted, neurotic, lonely, and socially awkward find it easier to express their true selves online instead of in person. It has also been found that those who feel they're able to express their true selves are more active on Facebook and other social media sites. And what about selfies? Those photos we take of ourselves. How accurate are they in showing our true selves? Or are they merely posing and posturing for effect? To impress others, to make our own little reality shows. Research has found that more women than men send selfies, and that excessive use of them can make the sender less likable or even reduce the intimacy or closeness of friendships. They can even reinforce the idea that how people look at them is more important than how they actually behave in real life toward their friends. Of course, as you know, we are not always honest in how we depict ourselves in person either, particularly when we meet new people, when we want to impress. Like a date or an employer. With people we have known for a while, with whom we feel secure, and who represent no threat, we may be less likely to pretend to be something that we are not. Perhaps the major difference with social networking sites is that there is a much wider and more instantly reachable audience than our everyday online lives. In addition, we now know that what we post about ourselves can also have great potential consequences to our careers and future when prospective employers find inappropriate content. One study found that how does social media influence our personality? Psychologists have found that the use of online social networking sites like Facebook can both shape and reflect personalities. One study of adolescents in China, aged 13 to 18, found that excessive time using the internet results in significant levels of anxiety and depression when compared to teenagers who didn't spend so much time online. There's a lot of studies. I'm just going to skip over some stuff. How does our personality influence our use of social media? In addition to affecting our personalities, social networking sites can also reflect them. Studies in both Eastern and Western cultures found that those who are more extroverted and narcissistic were more likely to use Facebook than those who did not score high on their personality characteristics. The more narcissistic teenagers were also more likely to update Facebook frequently. Other studies suggest that those who report high uses of social networking sites tend to be more extroverted, more open to new experiences, lower in self-esteem and socialization skills, less conscientious. Personality differences among cell phone users have also been found. Research involving teenagers and adults in Australia found that extroverts and those with a strong sense of self-identity spent much more time making calls and changing their ringtones and wallpaper. The studies also found that those who were more neurotic and less conscientious and shy spent more time texting than calling. Finally, what about the personalities of people who engage in internet trolling, deliberately hurting, harassing, and upsetting others by posting hateful, inflammatory, and derogatory comments about them? What are they like? They're not nice. They take pleasure in degrading others. The role of race and gender in shaping personality. The personality theorists we cover in this book offer diverse views of the nature of the human personality. Despite their disagreements and divergences, however, they all share certain defining characteristics in common. All are white, European or American heritage, and almost all men. There was nothing unusual about that, given the period during which most of these theorists were developing their ideas. At the time, nearly all of the great advances in arts, philosophy, literature, and the sciences, including the development of scientific methods, were propounded and promoted by white men of European or American background. In most fields, educational and even most fields, educational opportunities for women and people of ethnic minority groups were severely limited. In addition, in the field of personality theory, virtually all the patients and subjects the early theorists were based on were also white. Even the laboratory rats were white. Wow. And also, the majority of the patients and subjects were men, yet the personality theorists can confidently offer theories that are supposed to be valid for all people. None of the theorists stated explicitly that his or her views only applied to men or to whites or to Americans, or that their ideas might not be useful for explaining personality in people of other backgrounds. Although the theorists accepted to some degree the importance of social and environmental forces in shaping personality, they tended to ignore or minimize the influence of gender and ethnic background. We know from our own experiences that our brothers, sisters, and friends were exposed to different childhood influences than we were, and that as a result, they grew up to have different personalities. We also know from research in social psychology that children from different environments, such as predominantly white Midwestern town, blah, 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 lots of different influences. In the world in which people live and the factors that affect their upbringing are so different, then surely personalities can be expected to differ. We also know that boys and girls are usually reared according to traditional gender stereotypes, and this upbringing also influences personality in different ways. Research has documented many differences between men and women on specific personality factors. For example, the role of culture in shaping personality. The influence of cultural forces on personality is widely recognized in psychology. A specialty area called cross-cultural psychology has fostered a great deal of research supporting the conclusion that personality is formed by both genetic and environmental influences. This was demonstrated in a study of Japanese who immigrated to the United States compared to those who stayed in Japan. They became much more American in their personalities. They changed in a lot of significant ways. Other research showed that Chinese immigrants to Canada demonstrated the same. Blah 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 blah. Anxiety of the negative emotions may also be related to cultural differences. Blah 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 blah. There are even large-scale cultural differences in brain activity and genetic makeup, which have been demonstrated in the field of cultural neuroscience. That's complicated. Using measures of brainwave activity, researchers found in brain functions between people in Western and Eastern cultures, one responding to the same stimuli. Things are very different, in the brain. Different cultural beliefs about destiny. The concept of karma has for centuries shaped the outlook of the people of India and other countries that accept Hinduism or Buddhism. They may be seen as fatalistic and deterministic views of human nature. The consequences of our present and past actions are believed to determine our destiny or fate. Our happiness or unhappiness in the future. In other words, events don't occur because we make them happen, but because they were destined to happen. I don't like that. I like controlling my own destiny because I'm me. I'm me, myself, and I. Where was I? I immediately went off the rocker. Oh, thus in this view, our fortune or misfortune, health or sickness, happiness or unhappiness, are preordained and independent of our own actions. You can see how this belief may lead to a passive, resigned personality type. Contrast this with a view of more typical American culture that emphasizes free choice and action and the role of our own personal effort and initiative in bringing our own personal success or failure. Individualism. Individual competitiveness and assertiveness are often seen as undesirable and contrary to Asian cultural standards. Western cultures are typically depicted as the opposite. Blah, 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 blah. In an individualistic society, the focus is on personal freedom, choice, and action. In a collectivist society, the focus is on group norms and values, group role expectations, and other cultural constraints on behavior. People in individualistic cultures show greater extroversion, self-esteem, happiness, just optimism in general about their future. And a belief in their ability to control and direct it. Genetic differences between people in collectivistic versus individualistic cultures have been linked to lower levels of anxiety and depression in collectivistic cultures and higher levels in individualistic cultures. The motivations and satisfactions. The degree to which a culture focuses on and encourages individualism has a powerful effect on the personality of its citizens. Child rearing practices. The impact on behavior and personality of cultural differences in child rearing practices is also substantial. It is the individualistic nature of the United States. Parents tend to be non-coercive, democratic, and permissive in their child rearing techniques. In other cultures, it's much more authoritarian, restrictive, and controlling. Studies. So many studies. I'm really glancing over the studies, honestly. They're not very interesting to me. Self-enhancement is defined as the tendency to promote oneself aggressively and make one conspicuous. I don't know. I can't pronounce words. The opposite of that, I can't pronounce that. I'm literally skipping. All of chapter 1 is about all these things. We'll get to something interesting soon. Diversity of culture. As we've just seen, there have been major advances in exploring a wide range of cultural differences in personality research in recent years. However, it still remains true that much less research has been conducted on personality in African and South American nations than in English-speaking countries, or in many of the countries of Europe and Asia. Also, much of the research that has been conducted among these populations has not been made widely available in English language sources. Another problem limiting the applicability of cross-cultural personality research is that the majority of studies in personality use American college students as subjects. Assessing your personality. To assess something means to evaluate it. The assessment of personality is a major area of application of psychology to a number of real-world concerns. For example, clinical psychologists try to understand the symptoms of their patients or clients by assessing their personalities, by differentiating them between normal and abnormal behaviors and feelings. Only by evaluating personality in this way can clinicians diagnose disorders and determine the best course of therapy. School psychologists evaluate the personalities of the students, refer to them for treatment, and attempt to uncover the causes of adjustment or learning problems. Industrial/organizational psychologists assess personality to select the best candidate for a particular job. Counseling psychologists measure personality to find the best job for a particular applicant, matching the requirements of their position with the person's interest and needs. Interesting needs, interesting needs, interesting needs. Research psychologists. No matter what you do in your life and your working career, it is difficult to avoid having your personality assessed in some way at some time. Indeed, much of your success in the workplace will be determined by performance on various psychological tests. Therefore, it is important that you have some understanding of what they are and how they work. The concepts of reliability and validity. The best techniques of personality assessment adhere to the principles of reliability and validity. Reliability involves the consistency of response to an assessment device. Suppose you took the same test on 2 different days and received 2 wildly different scores. How would you know which score is the most accurate one? A test like that would not be considered reliable because the results are so inconsistent. Validity refers to whether an assessment device measures what it's intended to measure. If the test does not measure what it claims to, then it is not valid and its results cannot be used to predict behavior. Methods of assessment. The personality theorists discussed in this book devised different methods for assessing personality. That were most useful for their theories. By applying these methods, they obtained the data on which they base their formulations. These techniques vary massively. Self-report personality tests. The self-report inventory or test approach involves asking people to report on themselves by answering questions about their behavior and feelings in various situations. These tests include items dealing with symptoms, attitudes, interests, fears, and values. Test takers indicate how closely each statement describes themselves or how much they agree with each item. There are a number of self-report study personality tests in use today, as we'll see later. But the most useful is the Minnesota Multi-Phase Personality Inventory. The MMPI has been translated into more than 140 languages. The test items cover physical and psychological health, political and social attitudes, educational, occupational, family, and marital factors, blah, 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 different tendencies, blah, 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 blah. But there are forms of these tests that have their shortcomings. It takes a lot of time to respond attentively to the large number of items. Some people lose interest. Also, some of the items on this and other self-report personalities deal with highly personal characteristics, which some may consider invasion of privacy. Assessment of self-report inventories. Oh gosh, sorry about that. I'm tired of reading this book. Although there are self-report inventories to assess many facets of personality, as we will see in later chapters, the tests are not always appropriate for people whose level of intelligence is below normal or with limited reading skills. There's also the tendency for test takers to give answers that appear more socially desirable or acceptable. Despite these problems, self-report inventories remain the most objective approach to personality assessment. The greatest advantage is that they are designed to be scored objectively and quickly through automated personality assessment programs, providing a complete diagnostic profile of the test taker's response. Online test administration. These are like self-report inventories. They're online. It's less time-consuming, less expensive. The scoring is more objective. But it also has been found that most of us are significantly more likely to reveal sensitive, even potentially embarrassing information when we're spending online to self-report inventories than pen and paper tests. Projective techniques. Clinical psychologists developed projective tests of personality for their work with the emotionally disturbed. Emotionally disturbed? Wow, that sounds rough. I say, not being the most normal fella in the world. Where was I? Inspired by Sigmund Freud, who we will get to. Emphasis on the importance of the unconscious projective tests attempt to probe the invisible portion of our personality. The theory underlying projective techniques is that we are presented with an ambiguous stimulus, like an inkblot or a picture that can be interpreted in more than one way. Because the interpretation of the results of projective tests is so subjective, these tests are not high in reliability or validity. It is not unusual for different people given the test to form different impressions. Rorschach and his inkblot It's developed in 1921 by Herman Rorschach, who's been investing bank lots. Basically, he played a game in which, they gave impressions of various implant designs, and he took this game to psychiatrists and patients there, and he found, okay, there's some interest in these responses. In developing these tests, he just dropped blobs of ink and folded them in half. He settled on 10 blobs because he could not afford to have more than 10 printed. Few copies were sold about his publication, but he eventually, the test became popular. He did become depressed and died 9 months after his work was published. Rorschach, basically, it's interpreted a lot. There's a lot to Rorschach and how you can interpret. There's like a whole book on this, on different interpretations. I would suggest, if you're actually very interested in that, I would suggest reading that yourself. Me, myself, and I'm not going to do that. That's a lot of time, and I'm not the most patient fellow. So, thematic appreciation test. 19 pictures showing one or more persons in a blank card. It's basically, you just do it yourself. You just design how things came to be. It's interesting. I've seen it on shows. Word association and sentence completion tests. I've actually done stuff like that. It's fun. I like it. Clinical interviews. In addition to specific psychological tests used to measure an individual's personality, assessment often includes clinical interviews. After all, it is reasonable to assume that valuable information can be obtained by talking to the person being evaluated and asking relevant questions about past and present life experiences, social and family relationships, and the problems that led the person to seek help. A wide range of behaviors, feelings, and thoughts can be investigated in these interviews. Over the results of these tests and interviews, they can focus on problems indicated by them and explore them in detail. Behavioral assessment. In the behavioral assessment approach, guess what? It's behavioral assessment. An observer evaluates a person's behavior. Sorry, my nose is like itchy. I'm very all over the place. I'm sorry. What was I saying? Please, what was I saying? Oh gosh. What was I saying? Behavioral assessment, yes. In a behavioral assessment approach, an observer evaluates a person's I'm sorry, I'm getting myself distracted very easily. The better the observers know the people being assessed and the more frequently they interact with them, the more accurate their evaluations are likely to be. Psychologist Arnold Buss and Robert Plomin developed a questionnaire to assess the degree of various temperaments present in the twins of the same sex. The mothers of the twins were asked on the basis of the observations shown to check these items on the questionnaire the best specifically examined stuff, basically. That's what they did. They examined stuff. Thought and experience assessment. In the behavioral approach to personality assessment, we saw that specific behavioral actions are monitored by trained observers. In the thought sampling approach to assessment, a person's thoughts are recorded systemically to provide a sample over a period of time. Because thoughts are private experiences and cannot be seen by anyone else, the only person who can make this type of observation is the individual whose thoughts are being studied. Sorry, I'm scrolling through some movies at the moment. I really shouldn't be doing that. like, oh my gosh, movies I could watch because movies are fun. Yeah, I'll put this on. I'm like literally scrolling through movies right now. It's very fun. It's very fun. Sorry. In this procedure, then the observer and the person being observed are the same. The thought sampling assessment procedure is typically used with groups, but it has also been applied to individuals to aid in diagnosis and treatment. A client can be asked to write or record thoughts and moods for later analysis by the psychologist. By the psychologist. The psychologist is the psychologist. A variation of thought sampling is the experience sampling method. This is conducted very much like thought sampling. Thought sampling is thought sampling assessment. A variation of thought sampling is the experience sampling method. This is conducted very much like thought sampling, but the participants are asked also to describe the social and environmental context in which the experience being sampled occurs. For example, subjects may be asked to note whether they were alone or with other people when stuff happened. Thought sampling research relies on technological developments such as smartphones to allow participants to record their assessments quickly and easily. Electronic entries can be timed and dated. Thus, researchers can determine whether assessments are being recorded at the times and intervals requested. An example, an experience sampling study, blah, blah, blah. A possible limitation of the experience sampling approach is that subjects might be so busy doing other things that they forget to record their activities when signaled to do so. As a result, the useful data may be restricted only to most conscientious research participants. Gender and ethnic issues that affect your assessment. Gender. The assessment of personality can be influenced by a person's gender. For example, women tend to score lower than men on tests measuring assertiveness, a difference that may result from sex role training that traditionally teaches girls and young women in some cultures not to assert themselves. Whatever the cause, personality test results often show differences between men and females. In addition, considerable data from personality tests, clinical interviews, and other assessments measures indicate differential rates of diagnosis based on gender for various emotional disorders. I don't want to read these because it's getting to like race and differences in a lot of these things with races, and I feel like it's just not overtly important at the moment as a lot of this book covers theorists. So I'm gonna skip a couple of the stuff of cultures that I'm just like, it doesn't feel the need. Just be aware that, other people have different cultures and different mindsets and views because of these cultures, and it's proper to give respect where, you should be giving them respect. And that a lot of people, the culture can be different, and you shouldn't make assumptions. You should try and keep it, just keep it steady. And I think that's just the best, choice for a lot of stuff. Yes, I'm going to skip a lot of that stuff because I'm going to probably repeat it somehow in this chapter. Research and the study of personality. Psychologists conduct research on personality in different ways. The method used depends on which aspect of personality is under investigation. Some psychologists are interested only in overt behavior, what we do and say in response to certain stimuli. Other psychologists are concerned with feelings and conscious experiences as measured by tests and questionnaires. Such self-report inventories are among the most frequently used research techniques. Still, other investigators try to understand the unconscious forces that may motivate us. The major methods used in personality research are the clinical method, the experimental method, virtual research, and the correlation method. The clinical method the primary clinical method is the case study or case history in which psychologists probe their patients' past and present lives for clues to the source of their emotional problems. Undertaking a case study is similar to writing a mini biography of a person's emotional life from the early years to the present day, including feelings, fears, and experiences. Freud used case studies extensively in developing his theory of psychoanalysis, as we see in Chapter 2. He probed into... We'll worry about this in Chapter 2. blah, 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 blah. The experimental method. An experiment is a technique for determining the effect of one or more variable or events on behavior. We are constantly exposed to stimuli going around us in our everyday lives. There are two kinds of variables in the experiment. One is the independent or stimulus variable, which is the one manipulated by the experimenter. The other is the dependent variable, which is the subject's behavior in response to that manipulation. To be certain that no variable other than the independent variable can affect the results, researchers study two groups of subjects. The experimental group includes those subjects to whom the experimental treatment is given. The control group is not exposed to these independent variables. Applying the experimental method. Here's an example of an experimental method in action, blah, 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 blah. The approach is obviously blah, 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 blah. It's difficult because there are limitations of the experimental method. Some aspects of behavior and personality cannot be studied under rigorous, controlled laboratory conditions because of safety and ethical disturbances. Another difficulty is the subject's behavior might change simply because they know they're being observed. Virtual research is conducted online research, including administering psychological tests, taking opinion surveys, and presenting experimental stimuli and recording the subject's responses. It is advantageous over traditional experimental research, faster results, less costly, reach a lot more people. However, web users tend to be young, more affluent, and better educated than non-users. So it's kind of limiting subjects you could be having. And they may have different personality characteristics. The correlation method, researchers investigate the relationships that exist among variables. Rather than manipulating an independent variable, the experimenters deal with the variable's existing attributes. Applying the correlational method, researchers applying the correlational method are interested in the relationship between the variables and how behavior on one variable changes or differs as a function of the other variable. Suppose the correlation coefficient, the primary statistical measure of correlation, is the correlation coefficient, which provides precise information about the direction and the strength of the relationship between two variables. The direction of the relationship can also be positive or negative. Cause and effect, the primary limitation of the correlational method. It's like more murders happen while more ice cream trucks are out. It's like one thing does not cause another. Though theory and personality theories are sometimes referred to in dismissive and contemptuous terms. It is popular to assume that a theory is something very vague and abstract and speculative. Theories are principles used to explain a particular class of phenomena, in our case, the behaviors and experiences relating to personality. If personality theories are to be useful, they must be testable, capable of stimulating research on their various propositions. Researchers must be able to collect data through one or more of the methods. Personality theories must be able to clarify and explain the data of personality by organizing it into a coherent framework. And understand a personality theory. Gosh, I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm like, do I need to really say all this stuff? It's like I feel like some of it's common sense. Like I know I probably shouldn't say common sense because I mean we're all different fundamentally, but the autobiographical nature of personality theories. Some personality theories have a subjective component which may reflect events in the theorist's life. In order to understand a personality theory fully, we must learn about the life of the person. That's basically the whole thing. Questions about human nature. What are we like? Are we in charge of our lives? Free will versus determinism. A basic question about human nature concerns the age-old controversy between free will and determinism. Theorists on both sides ask, can we consciously direct the course of our actions? What dominates us? Nature or nurture? We know that. Are we dependent or independent? Or child basically just past define us. Is human nature unique or universal? Our life goals, the satisfaction or growth. Do people just get that short-term satisfaction or long-term growth? Pessimism or optimism? That's like outlook of life. Okay. Chapter summary. You know, the thing we've been waiting for this entire time. Personality can be defined as an enduring, unique cluster of characteristics that may change in different situations. Differences in gender, ethnicity, and cultural background can influence personality development and the result of personality assessment tests. Research in cross-cultural psychology shows that how personality can vary from one culture to another. Techniques for assessing or measuring personality must be reliable and valid. The resulting assessment of personality can be influenced by the subject's gender and ethnic identity and by the test administrator's own beliefs and attitude. Self-report inventories in which people report on their own behavior and feelings in various situations are objective in that scores are not influenced by personal or theoretical biases. Clinical interviews are used to assess personality, but the interpretation is subjective. Translation of personality tests must be taken into account. Psychological research methods include clinical, experimental, virtual, blah, 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 blah. A theory providing a framework. Okay. Basically, that's the beginning. Cool. Thank you. Have a nice time. This has been your host. Goodbye.